This is called the Camel's Gate, or the Eye of the Needle. By night, this would be the only entrance into the palace area. And possibly this is what Jesus was referring to when he said, it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God than it is for a camel to go through the eye of the needle. It's interesting that a camel can pass through this entrance, but to do so, he would have to get down on his knees, strip off all of his packs, and crawl through. And in the same way, for us as Christians, whether we're rich or poor, we all enter into the kingdom of God in the same way. We have to humble ourselves before God, give up everything that we have, and follow Christ. We find that's what it means to be a missionary, to go into another culture. We need to forget about our culture, humble ourselves, become a servant to that new culture, and try to identify with them and what it means to be a disciple of Christ within that culture. Split is a city that dates back to about the 3rd century when Diocletian built his summer palace there as he would go about the Roman Empire and check on the various parts. He used, interestingly enough, Christians of the time as slaves to build his palace, and he is considered to be the worst persecutor of Christians of that era, even worse than Nero in the things that he would do to Christians. And Paul says they went as far as Dalmatia, so if actually he entered into Dalmatia, it's most likely that he and Timothy witnessed in the city of Solona, just behind the city of Split. And there came the early forms of Christianity. Croatia is a land that's been riddled by wars. It's been a part of Hungarian and Austrian Empire, a part of Roman Empire and Turkish Empire. It's been occupied by Italians and Bosnians. Most recently, the Croatians declared their independence from the former Yugoslavia. And from that time, which resulted in a devastating war and massive destruction. And as the Croatians are slowly, in these last few years, recovering from that war, in the neighboring country Bosnia, there still is massive destruction. There are many homes, just hundreds of miles of homes, totally destroyed by the war. There are people who are traumatized by the war and by the things that they saw during that time. Only about a fifth of Croatia is employed, caring for the rest of Croatia, of the 5 million people in Croatia. In 1992, a group of believers in San Diego, California, developed a burden for the people of Croatia. They began to pray as the country was at war. A third of its land was occupied, and many refugees were flooding into Croatia from Bosnia and from the surrounding areas of Croatia that were occupied. When they began to pray, and they invited Sherry and I to pray with them. And within a short time, a few months' time, we began to share their burden for Croatia. And as we prayed, we asked God that He would really show us how we can bless these people. And we realized the best way that we could bless people is if we can give them reproducing, disciple-making churches that have a real heart to minister to the real needs of the community around them. And that's meant for us not only praying, but working in partnership with nationals and even sending our own. And so Sherry and I signed up to come to Croatia, and in 1993 we flew over here, and from that time began a whole new adventure for our lives.
Well, my greatest ministry I see that God has given me is my family, and that involves the long-term discipling of our kids, of homeschooling them, of making sure that things go well at home so that Kent can do what he needs to do. As far as my own personal mission passion would be discipleship. Since I was in InterVarsity Christian Fellowship in college and someone discipled me, I felt that that was my purpose in life, was to disciple women, to help them follow Christ. Not to say that I am the last word. I explain it to them that I merely want to walk alongside of them. And I would like, when I'm 70 or 80 years old, God willing, that I can have a legacy of women behind that I've had a part in their life.
Just as the eye of the needle is the entrance into the center of the city of Split, so another needle is leading the youth of this city toward death. This place where I'm standing right now, we are actually in the Diocletian Palace in Split, looking out of it through this window. And just behind the walls here within the palace is just one of the most popular spots for drug addicts to shoot up with heroin. And as we peruse around here, we find hundreds of needles scattered around this area. It's said in Split that there's around 20,000 drug addicts in a city of only 200,000 to 300,000 people. And it's one of the worst problems in all of Europe after Amsterdam. They say even per populace, it's the worst problem than in a big city like New York. And one of the things we are doing here, as we've been helping the people in Croatia, is trying to help with this problem of drug addicts. We've seen over 400 drug addicts from Split go to Christian centers around Europe, primarily in Spain and in Portugal and in other places.
Sve je bilo dobro do 14. godine.
It's like this, everything was good for me until I was 14 years old.
I kad mi je umrao otac sa 14 godina,
Then when my father died when I was 14 years old,
onda je sve krenulo naopako.
then everything went upside down.
Mater me poslala u vojnu školu
My mother started to teach in school.
i tu sam se propušio marihuanu,
I started smoking marijuana
tablete
and taking pills,
i da bi malo pomalo došao do heroina.
and then slowly, little by little, I came to taking heroin. Friends around him slowly started to suffer, to die even from taking heroin. So
Materi sam prodao cijelu kuću, sve zemlje, sve sam prodao.
he sold his mother's house and land, everything, just so he could get drugs.
Sa 22 godine, zadnji put kad sam išao uzeti heroin s bratom, on je umro, ja sam ostao živ.
His twin brother at age 22 died, and only he was left alive.
Bili smo blizanci.
They're twins.
I poslije toga odlučio sam se ići liječiti u Španjolsku. Neki centar bilo.
He died also of overdose of drugs, and at that time I decided to go to Centeretto. But little by little, God began to fill that emptiness inside of me with His love.
Iz dana u dan rastao sam. I dan danas rastem u vjeri. Želim upoznat Boga sve više i više, iako imam 1000 grešaka, ali sam shvatio da Bog je taj koji promijenio moj život.
And day by day I began to grow, and still day by day I am growing. Yeah, even if there's 1,000 mistakes I make, I'm still growing, and God is changing my life.
Počeo sam se drogirati heroinom sa 13 godina.
And I began shooting up with heroin at age of 13. I didn't live in the house, I lived in the streets.
I jednoga dana sreo sam jednoga momka koji se nalazio na liječenju u komuni Reto centar.
And then one day I met a young fellow who was in the Centeretto community already.
On mi je dao jedan letak
He gave me a little tract.
i možda tamo nakon godinu dana ja sam se odlučio javiti na liječenje u tu komunu.
Then from that time, about a year later, I finally decided that I should go to get healing for myself in that community. So I began for the first time in my life to start to pray and to seek God for help, realizing that He's the only one that could help me out of the situation.
Tako sam malo pomalo i počeo sam primat neku vjeru, osjetio sam da se punim nekako i moj život se počeo naglo mijenjati kao da sam okrenuo drugi list.
Little by little, I started to feel change. I started to experience faith and to experience some change in my life.
I sada znam da je samo je Bog promijenio moj život. Ništa više, niti reto, niti nikakvi program liječenja, nego samo baš je Bog promijenio moj život.
And now I know and I'm confident that only God has saved my life, not this center retro and other people, but only God.
God is something very important in my life, because without God, I'm a nothing. Maybe I start to use the drugs again, because God, it's mine. I don't know how to explain. It's like my stone, it's mine, my friend. Without God, I'm a nothing,
With the help of World Hope International, we've now been able to purchase a farm for drug addicts in Croatia. This corn we just planted this year.
First time this year.
And on the right side we had a couple of tons of potatoes, maybe 20 tons of corn, and in the middle and farther back there is just about every variety of vegetable they grew this year for their own eating and also for selling on the market. It's the first program within Croatia and throughout the former Yugoslavia, first complete program for rehabilitating drug addicts. And on this farm, we were able to, first of all, develop different skills through what we call work therapy. We're in the barn here, and they're arranging it right now for during the winter. They'll raise turkeys here for Christmas time and thereafter.
Čitajući Novi Zavjet i otvorivši srce molitvi, upoznao sam Boga.
So little by little, reading New Testament, I opened my heart to the prayer to God.
I Bog me dotaknuo svojim duhom i pokazao mi puno stvari zbog kojih se isplati živjeti.
God showed me many things as He touched my heart with His Spirit and showed me the new way of living for which think is worthy to live.
I sad sam tu na ovoj farmi, pomažem momcima.
I'm here now on this farm and helping the boys.
Želim slijediti Krista i dalje.
And I want to follow Christ in my life.
Uvijek.
Forever.
Now, after years, many of these drug addicts have become recovered. They've been given their lives to Christ, and they want to return to their community, but all they find is their old friends who try to entice them to come back to drugs. And it's a very large temptation and a very difficult moment for them. So how are we responding? First, we are developing ministries to drug addicts and their parents. Secondly, we are forming a learning center, training center for people can learn about computers and learn English language. Thirdly, we are increasing the development of people through discipleship training and leadership training.
I've really enjoyed the discipleship I've been able to do in the past 4 years, and to be able to see those women growing and discipling other women. And also as we do this Bible study for married couples, I see that as an incredible way of impacting their lives and impacting their families.
We are told that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against spirits and principalities of darkness. And so this place that we are looking over this city is a place that We've come to twice a week in the early morning hours as the sun is rising over that mountain. We come up here and pray for this city and claim this city for God and claim that God will be praised, that God will be worshipped in this city by young believers who have come to believe in His name. And just as that camel needs to nudge his way through that channel of the eye of the needle, we need partners, we need a team of people who will nudge through there with us to see the country of Croatia reach with the gospel of Jesus Christ.